Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha. I'm here with our family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad-gītā verse by verse, and we're in the 13th chapter. And the past few classes have been very practical and relevant because we're going over this list of 20 qualities that Krishna calls knowledge, or the process of knowledge. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. But before we do that, let's go ahead and have our prayers. Shakti, do you want to say our prayers for us this morning?
I'd be honored. Thank you so much. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaitya Gadahara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you. So we are starting today with verses 8 through 12, which we've been working on for a while, for the past couple classes. We're actually more at like verses 11 and 12, but they're kind of grouped together. So we'll just go ahead and read them all again, and then we'll start with the qualities that we haven't covered yet. Um, and that's what this list is. We'll read the verse in a second, but it's 20 qualities, and and it's a different definition of knowledge than what we're used to. So when we hear knowledge, we usually think of like information. Knowledge is learning how to build a house or run a business or become a doctor. And these things are great, they're necessary for functioning in the world. But the kind of knowledge that we're talking about here is completely different. This kind of knowledge is a knowledge that helps us become free from material existence altogether. So if we remember where we are in chapter 13, Krishna's described the body as a field made up of the 24 material elements. And it's also a place where we experience birth, death, disease, and old age. And these things aren't natural to the soul. They're not natural to the soul because the soul is eternal. So as we talked about in our last session together, birth, death, disease, old age, these are symptoms of the real disease. And the real disease is that we've become so absorbed in material energy that we've forgotten our eternal identities as servants of God. So when Krishna calls these qualities knowledge, he's saying these are qualities that gradually free us from entanglement. So this is the knowledge that becomes the way out of this entanglement. So with that in mind, let's read this verse and we'll get into the qualities that we haven't yet spoken about. 1 second, I'll share my screen. Let me just find this verse actually. Go. Okay, I'll share my screen. And whenever you're ready, Shakti.
Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement, with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides, this whatever there may be is ignorance. Hare
Very
Krishna.
nice. Thank you. So we see here where we ended in the last session, we got through freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. We really dove deep into that, where we talked about the difference between attachment and affection. So that was in the last class. Today we'll start right here, which I think is around 11, verse 11, right at even-mindedness amid a pleasant and unpleasant events. So let's unpack that a little bit. Um, and oh, before we even unpack that one, I want to just get to this to the constant and unalloyed devotion to me. Actually, let's start with that one because this one Prabhupada says is the most important. And we talked about this a little bit in the last class too. That this devotion is not just another quality on the list. It's actually the source from which all the others grow. So we think of it like we water the root of a tree, and all the root and all the leaves are naturally nourished. So bhakti is the root, devotion is the root. And as our relationship with Krishna deepens, our humility deepens, our tolerance deepens, our detachment deepens, our steadiness deepens. These qualities become like byproducts of our connection with Krishna. They just naturally happen. So then we may ask, so how do we cultivate that connection? And this is the process of bhakti altogether. This is devotional service. And one of the most powerful and simplest ways is through mantra meditation. This is where we chant. We can chant together, like in kirtan. Many of us go to kirtans regularly and experience firsthand just how uplifting a kirtan is. We're just chanting the holy names of God. It's very sacred. It's very uplifting. We can also chant by ourselves on japa beats, chanting the names of God. And these aren't just like sometimes it can just kind of sound like a monotonous or just repeating the same words over and over, like it's a little bit weird even. But in the Vedic tradition, the holy name, it's considered because God is absolute, the holy name is Krishna himself. So actually, when we're chanting, we're associating directly with God. And as we know, when whoever we're associating with, we become more like. When we associate with God, we become purified. We remember who we actually are. We're entering into a relationship. We're inviting Krishna into our consciousness. And when we think about what happens when like the sun rises, it's like you don't have to chase away the darkness. It's just the sun rises, the light comes, and the darkness just naturally disappears. And so the same is true with our hearts. As Krishna becomes more present in our consciousness through the sounds of his names, these qualities just naturally start to develop. Pride begins to soften, selfishness begins to soften, envy begins to soften because our hearts are becoming transformed. And it's not like we're just trying harder, but we're becoming more deeply connected. And this is such an important point that spiritual life isn't primarily about just trying harder. Some of us are like very like go-getters, like I could just put more effort into it and I'll get more results. And we're really tied into that. But spiritual life is actually about becoming more deeply connected. So our endeavor is important. But in spiritual life, we know we don't rely solely on our endeavor. It's actually Krishna's mercy that gets us through. Mercy that's given through that relationship. And in that connection, transformation naturally follows. And then something beautiful happens. We're no longer just the ones who benefit from the transformations. As our heart gets illuminated, then we become instruments so that Krishna can extend that same light to others. This is the beautiful practice of bhakti. Our words then start to encourage people. Our actions start to uplift people. Our presence makes people feel peaceful. And this is what true character is. Not just becoming a better person, but becoming someone through whom Krishna's love and compassion just naturally flows into the lives of others. And this is real knowledge. So this next quality that we'll talk about, now we're getting to this next quality, even-mindedness and pleasant. No, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. I think those are the words, right? Even-mindedness. So this quality is very difficult to cultivate because life rarely unfolds according to our plans. We we're going to be disappointed. Plans are going to fall apart. Our health is going to change. And almost instantly our mind starts telling a story, like this shouldn't be happening to me. Why is this happening? Everything was going so well. And so the Gita invites us to question this story. Instead of asking, why are these things going wrong? Maybe we should ask more like, why am I so surprised when they do? Because if we've lived long enough, we've all experienced these setbacks, just setbacks, disappointments, things that changed we didn't expect to. So why do we still expect life to cooperate with every one of our plans?
Hmm.
And Krishna isn't asking us to become passive. The Gita wasn't spoken to encourage Arjuna to sit down and accept defeat. It was spoken to help him get up and act. So the difference is this: Krishna isn't asking us to stop acting. He's asking us to stop reacting. Because most of our suffering doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from the story we immediately tell ourselves about the event. We decide that this is terrible or unfair or proof that things will never get better before we've even had a chance to respond wisely. So instead of asking, is this good or bad? Krishna invites us to ask, given what's in front of me, what is the right thing to do now? This one question moves us out of emotional reaction and into conscious action. Given what's in front of me now, what is the right thing to do? I have an example of this actually just this weekend. My husband and I were driving into the city, driving into Pittsburgh, and my husband is from Chicago. Anybody who's ever been to Chicago, it's like I feel like driving on the highways there, you're like in a NASCAR race. People are like, like swerving out of the lane, like following people really closely. Anyway, this is how my husband drives. And this has always been like something that we argue about because we get in the car and I'm like, I feel anxiety. I'm like, I don't care if we don't get there fast. Like, let's just go nicely with the flow. And so constantly we're arguing about this, like husbands and wives do. You can imagine like it's like a bickering. So this happened this weekend. And instead of like getting into like this defensive mode, which usually happens right away from me, I say something snappy and he says, it's safe, it's fine, I can handle it. I'm not gonna, you know, I like waited. I'd waited to even like say anything. And then I said, I know that you're a really good driver and that, whether something happens or not, I totally get it. At the same time, like I feel a lot of anxiety around this. And could you just maybe help me out by just not following people so closely and going in and out of lanes? And I tell you, the next time we got in the car, it was a totally different experience. Just like not having this knee-jerk emotional reaction off of my feelings, which, are valid or not, you know, but just taking that time and responding in a way, in a place of clarity and vulnerability. And this like made all the difference. He actually, when I said that, he like reached over and grabbed my hand. You know, it was like very sweet. So we can learn to practice this. You know, we don't have to, we can learn to be even-minded amid pleasant and unpleasant events. And what happens is, you know, we can practice this and it's difficult, but also as we really get connected to Krishna and we really have this love and compassion for Krishna, we start to have more love and compassion for everybody who's connected to Krishna. And naturally, we want to be more sensitive to people. We don't want to come across as sharp and direct and rude because we naturally have more love and compassion for them. So it happens both ways. We can be more aware and we can try and also understand that as this relationship with Krishna is growing, it happens naturally. We become more even-minded and among events that are pleasant or unpleasant. They don't shake us as much. And this is where devotion even comes back into the picture because it's much easier to stay steady and separate reaction from response when we trust that Krishna hasn't lost sight of us. When we remember that he's actually a supreme controller and our ultimate well-wisher. We don't have to immediately go into like control mode, you know, feeling like things are safe or unsafe or a blessing or disaster. You know, sometimes we can say, you know, I don't understand why this is happening, but we can trust that Krishna does. And just that trust creates space. Space between what happens and how we choose to respond. And in that space, wisdom has a chance to speak. And this is what real even-mindedness is. It's not pretending difficult things don't hurt. It's not suppressing our emotions, but it's remaining spiritually grounded so that whatever life brings, we can still choose our response instead of just being controlled by our reaction. I was just talking about this in the japa session yesterday with, you know, when we trust that Krishna is the enjoyer, is the maintainer, is our best friend, is the proprietor. This is what Prabhupada calls the peace formula. Because we feel peaceful. We know that life is working for us. We know that there's a divine plan unfolding for us. We know that nothing is really ours to own anyway. And that the point of this existence is not to enjoy everything around us, but to serve God. When we really imbibe those realizations, life becomes peaceful. It's quite beautiful. Does anybody want to share anything around this before we move on to the next quality?
Oh, sorry, Shakti, you had your hand up.
Oh,
No, Nancy, go.
I can't see everybody's hands, just so you know. I
Nancy,
only
you
see
go.
like 5 people.
I never know how to put my hand up, so I'm sorry.
I only see who's right in front of me on the screen. Shakti, is your hand up,
Okay.
dear?
Yeah, I did as well. Um,
Oh, good.
yeah,
Okay,
no,
great.
I really I appreciate that because I keep on thinking that phrase that I like to use is that this isn't happening to me, it's just happening. I mean,
Mm.
in the past, I would always think these events were somehow conspiring against me. Things were coming up, and now it's my battle to fight. And your point about coming to a place where you have this trust and this faith in Krishna that okay, something's happening here. That really it does make for an easier life. I also thought of the fact that my thinking has to change. The even-mindedness means that I tend to stop using words like never and always. You know,
Mm.
you never do this, or this always happens. Because when I do that, I get into this pattern of just, it's not resentment, but it's just, another burden that I have is that things never go my way. I always get the fuzzy end of the lollipop. or you're always disrespecting me, or this always happens. And so moving away from those extremes of thinking really allows me to also come to a place where I'm like, okay, now I have greater trust, greater faith. And as you point out beautifully, I can sit, pause, and react out of love and devotion rather than having this knee-jerk reaction, which is not always the best. My first thought. Wait for the second thought to happen. So thank you so
Mm.
much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I love that. Wait for the second thought to happen. Yeah, that's so good. If we're feeling emotionally charged, wait for the next thought. Very nice. Thank you.
I wanted to,
Shakti.
yeah, I wanted to share. So, someone, there was a comment that someone said things aren't happening to me; they're happening for me, and like so that's like they're happening for me because that's there's a lesson that you need to try that will be good for you to learn, right? There's a lesson here, so they're not happening to me, but they're happening for me to grow. And I mean, I'm saying it like, yeah, they're happening for me. Yeah, that is not how it happens when I'm in the midst of those lessons. Um, and I just was thinking, like, it's like it would make my life so, like, our life so much better if we were to have a realization and instead of using, oh my God, it always is like this, right? Like that, those two words too, Nancy, 100%. Never and always. Those are like kind of in that the consciousness, and I feel like yeah, like this is just something um, that I I'm working on and is really, really hard. And I know will make my life better, but in the moment, it is really hard. This whole list is, there's some that are harder than others. There's some that I feel like, oh yeah, I do this really well. This one, yeah, not so much. But it's really nice to talk through them, and to hear that other people are having a problem too. Like it's not just me. Like I'm not a bad person, and I'm not, mean to my husband, and that's not who I am. It's wow, the material world is really at me, and I'm trying. Krishna is trying to show himself to me by giving me these challenges. Like that's what's
Yes.
happening when he's making things when things are getting challenging. Krishna is showing me love. And I
Mm.
have to remember that when things are hard, he's saying, I love you. Here's a lesson.
Mm.
And so I just need to
Yes.
remember that. Does that make
Yeah, that's
sense?
so nice. I wish that my little 2-year-old felt like that, like when she's trying to chase her dad mowing the lawn, and I'm like, no, don't, you can't do that. And she's so mad and upset and hating me. I wish she understood, like, mom's just trying to help you. We're the same way, right? We don't get it. Krishna's trying to help us, even if things seem hard or difficult or not our way. He's trying to help us, save us from the lawnmower.
Mm.
We don't get it. Thank you, Shakti. Martine.
Hare Krishna. I think these are patterns that are so hard to break because it gets entangled with the emotion, and the emotions feed the pattern, and then it's like the hamster in the wheel. And even though as we get through these reactions and these, the words come out of our mouths, we can see that this is not the right thing to say, to do at this moment, but we can stop. I was just chatting with Shakti. It's like, this is so timely for me because something happened yesterday that is exactly what you're talking about. Going 0 to 100 in a split second, not being able to hit the brakes. You don't know where you're going, but you know that you're going to hit the wall at some point, right? And the wall is the emotions of somebody else or hurting someone else that you don't intend to hurt, right? And generally, it's the people closest to us because we are in a safe space, right? So regardless of what happens, they are going to take it, get hurt, then you apologize, and then you realize that So, but it's the hardest thing to do. And it's like, every time you do a step forward, you do 3 steps backwards. And you say, what am I, I'm in this for X number of years and whatever, but it's a lifelong journey. We all have our, me a little bit, we all have our relationship with what we call God. God is not a word I like, so just so you know, everyone. So, whatever, divinity or something bigger than myself, right? Because I can't visualize a sentient being up there. That's not who I am, right? It's more of what, and yeah, and you feel so lousy afterward, right? And then you go the other way, right? You beat yourself up even more, right? Which is counterproductive to where is the lesson in that, right? And you feel terrible, right? So yeah, I mean, it is very interesting because every time we talk about one of those subject, or we read, whether it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad-gītā or anything else that I listen to, whether in this path or my own tradition, it's like hitting the nail right on the head. It's like why today are we addressing exactly this topic, right? So yeah. So so it's I think being having a strong personality is also very difficult to give yourself the space, right? To be tender with yourself, right? Because it becomes a way to deal with life, right? Every challenge that you go, fear can be a paralyzing factor, and we all live with fear. It's like a balance between fear and no fear, right?
Yeah.
And I had friends who they both passed away, but their fear was really paralyzing for them, right? For me, because of the kind of family I come from, the fear has always been a moving forward factor. But when you do that, you shield yourself from the emotional aspect of that, right? Because you have to keep going. And whatever emotion goes with the moving forward, you don't really address per se, because you have to deal with the obstacles, or with life, or with work, or with, financial difficulties, or with whatever it is, right? And so it piles up, right?
Yeah.
Over the years, right? And as you hit the stage where I am now, retired, all of a sudden, okay, I am looking back and I have to kind of heal myself from those things, right?
Yeah.
So it's always like that, and in a way, going into that direction, I feel, am I being weak? Am I giving in to these, moments? Is it okay for me to allow myself to that quote unquote weakness, or should I still appear that strong, person who is able to just go forward? So it's always, it's a lot of judgment, and we here learn that judgment is not really a good recipe for wellness, right? For inner wellness. So yeah, it's a lot. I mean, today is like so timely, I can't even begin to tell you. But thank you.
Thank you. And these shares are, maybe I kind of want to share something with you guys. This is what we're learning in this verse, that it's so good to be aware of these qualities and to try to cultivate these qualities. I am like huge about self-growth and development. Like before I even got into spiritual life, it was like I was reading every therapy book I could get my hands on, spending lots of time in therapy. It's like big in my chart too, of like being really involved in like personal development and growth. But I can also tell you, like, even going down that rabbit hole, we come to a place where we realize, like, I can only go so far. Like like we can't just rely on our own strength and endeavor to even improve ourselves, or it just becomes like another rabbit hole of material life. And this is where spiritual life just makes everything complete. Because when we come into spiritual life and we connect with God, it becomes, even imbibing these qualities, it doesn't become so much of a struggle and so much of an analysis paralysis and so much of a like beating ourselves up. It becomes like sweet. It becomes uplifting. It's not hard. And life isn't supposed to be so hard. This is such a big lesson for me. Like life doesn't need to be so hard because we don't have to do it on our own. And when we are in connection with God, all of these things just come naturally. So there's this very real truth, and this verse tells us over and over, by saying that devotional service is the most important. It's not just like, oh, connecting with me is the most important. It's like, no, that's what makes developing all these qualities like almost like effortless in a sense. And so we can really take shelter in that connection. We could really put our faith into this process, which is seemingly simple. We're just chanting names of God. It's seemingly simple, but it's transformational. And this is what I feel as a person who's been like so committed to self-growth and development. This is like the turbo blast to take you to the next level. Is like Krishna can we can make a little bit of progress and then it's like a springboard. Krishna's grace just, makes us soar because we're connected to that which is infinite and we're so finite. And we have to understand that. We have to expect that we're going to be reactive, that we're not always going to be aligned. Expect that's our default operating mode. But when we're connected to Krishna, we become just swept away in that river of grace, love, and compassion. It's it's amazing. We're so fortunate to have this knowledge and this community. Mariah, would you like to share something with us?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, um, I too went down that like psychology route and like analyzing my behavior all the time. And I got so stuck in this like, okay, here's another lesson. Let me analyze it and like pick it apart and like, choose to be different. But choosing to practice bhakti and this devotional life path, it does. It just helps you get out of that constant analyzing loop, as you said. And you can you it helps you just like pause more. And then it also helps me to realize like, okay, I don't have to constantly analyze and pick apart myself. It's like, yes, I have to clean my heart of all my conditioning. And yes, the lessons are still going to come. But now I can see it as Krishna's mercy. Like the lesson is purification. It's purifying me of past karmic reactions or past karmic conditionings or whatever. And I don't have to like endeavor so hard to pick it apart, but I can trust that Krishna's bringing it into my awareness now because it's purifying, so it's being cleaned away. And if I stick with the process of devotional service and chanting, then the cleansing is going to keep happening. And yeah, so I've changed my thought process of like, instead of seeing it as like such a harsh lesson, it's an old conditioning coming to my vision of awareness or my awareness, and Krishna's cleaning it away, and let me just stick to my chanting because it will continue to clean it away. I mean, I still make conscious efforts to notice it and to choose to act differently, but I'm not like having to go down like this whole trauma rabbit hole of like, where did this start? Why do I have this? It's more like, okay, I have this. Krishna's bringing it into awareness. He's cleaning it. And let me just stick to the process and choose, a higher quality of being or ask for guidance on how to be better rather than like going backwards. I'm trying to go forward. Does that make sense? Um, Anyways, I just wanted to
Perfect.
share that. Thank you.
It's beautifully said. Thank you so much, Mariah. Really nice.
Thank you. I mean, this class is it's one of those things that just helps you see it and helps you trust the process. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Kripa Maya, do you have some words of wisdom for us here?
Well, I can try to reflect the words of wisdom I've been hearing in my own words. I especially liked, what was said earlier about, things are happening to me. Things are not just happening to me, but they're happening for me. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, if I can see the world in that way, I'll be happy. The things are happening for me, for a purpose. I'll become happier. Um, I was really connecting to what we said earlier about, the trusting Krishna. And last week, Kalachandji Babu, when he was speaking, his voice sounds so much like his brother. It was like, I was like, taken back into time. And I remember his brother, Tamal Krishna Goswami, one time said that, chanting is like, just like every day we take a bath to cleanse our body. Similarly, chanting is taking a bath for our consciousness. And just like if we don't take a bath every day, he said we start to stink. In the same way, if we don't chant and come in contact with Krishna's God's name, and he has millions of names, but if we don't come in contact with any of those names, then our consciousness starts to stink. We no longer have our sweet original fragrance, begins to perfume the world as soon as we come in contact with Krishna's name. And I just one thing I was just having this epiphany this morning, is that as we were chanting, how, you talked about earlier about bringing Krishna, inviting Krishna into our consciousness. And Krishna, as you said earlier, he's not different from his name. Krishna is fully conscious. In other words, we have a conditioned conception of what is consciousness. We think consciousness only exists within, let's say, a Homo sapien body or an animal body, but actually consciousness exists within Krishna's name. And the difference is his consciousness is infinite. He has infinite consciousness. So, there's this. I've just been trying to just whenever I hear Krishna's name or hear these topics, this discussion right now about Krishna, trying to just absorb myself more and more and just hearing it. It's almost like there's no limit to how more attentively or more absorbed we can be in the holy name or in these topics and hearing all of you share. This is exactly what Krishna says in Bhagavad-gītā. The thoughts of my devotees dwell in me, their lives are dedicated to me, they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening each other and conversing about me. So I think the more we enlighten each other, the more we start to experience the living consciousness in Krishna's name, in Krishna's existence in the world. And so I just want to thank you for everyone for creating this healing space.
Wow. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Kripa Maya. Did everybody see how Kripa Maya started out when I asked him if he had anything, if he wanted to share anything? And he said, I don't have anything, but I would like to, but I could share what I've heard. He just started out in such a humble mood, and this isn't something that he tried. I'm sure he didn't think, he didn't plan that was what he was going to say first. That was just what he said first because he imbibes these qualities. He's humble. He's gone through this process. He's been practicing this much longer than I've been alive. He's the original Prabhupada disciple. He's just very we can learn so much from people like this and having their association. We can see these qualities. We could see the direct result of spending so much time in this devotional service. It's just a mood that they imbibe. So grateful to have you with us here, Kripa Maya. Would anybody else like to share? Chantal or Devi Radhika. I saw you both on camera, so I thought I'd call you out. If not, we can move on, so no pressure. But I just wanted to give any space. Okay. Okay, the next quality that we'll talk about then. This is a little short one. This is aspiring to live in a solitary place. So this doesn't mean everyone should move to a cabin in the woods. It's just that when we become attracted to spiritual life, we naturally begin to value environments that help us remember Krishna rather than distract us from him. And a place of solitude, it creates space, space to reflect, space to pray, space to hear our own hearts. In our modern world, it's just constantly competing for our attention. So Krishna here with this is reminding us that spiritual growth, it requires these moments where we intentionally step away from the noise. I feel this when I go to New Vrindavan. It's like, it's so rural, it's so beautiful, it's so peaceful. And a peaceful environment is really, is so conducive to spiritual growth and connection. And so the next quality that he talks about is not mixing with the general mass of people. And this is not, not, let's see. Sometimes people misunderstand this. Maybe like it doesn't mean that we can't have friends who aren't devotees, or we can't we have to isolate ourselves from society. He's encouraging us to be intentional about whose voices we allow to shape our lives. Because as we all know, association is super powerful. The people we spend the most time with influence the way we think, what we value, what we desire, and ultimately the direction our lives begin to move. We know this. There's something out there that like you're the most like the top 5 people you spend the most time with or something. But I experienced this firsthand, like in giving a presentation. Anyone ever given a presentation in front of like a lot of people? And right away as a presenter, you notice like if the audience is engaged, smiling, like nodding their head, responding positively, it naturally like gives you a little more confidence. Like you feel more just peaceful, in the flow. But if your audience is like rolling their eyes, looking bored, judging everything you say, you immediately become more guarded. I remember when I first started doing retreats, there was someone on retreat who I could tell when I was speaking were just like completely not there. And to the point where like I had to like look at I was not expert enough in teaching it. Like it was too distracting to me. Like I was getting too drawn in by their feelings that they were bubbling up in me, and it was making me insecure. So it's very difficult. Like we're very affected by people's feelings and around us. And I recently saw this clip from Jay Shetty on Instagram, and someone asked him, "What makes you confident?" And I really liked his answer. He said, "Confidence came when I stopped needing everyone to like me." He accepted that some people just simply weren't going to like him. And that was okay. I thought this was such a healthy perspective and so important for our spiritual growth. Because so much of our emotional energy gets spent trying to win over people who may never appreciate us. Isn't it? Like we crave approval from people who don't share our values. Isn't that funny? We worry about disappointing people who don't even understand what's most important to us. Meanwhile, we overlook the people who genuinely love us, support us, and encourage us to grow. So here, Krishna's inviting us to reverse that. Don't overvalue those who don't value your spiritual life. Instead, invest deeply in relationships with people who remind you of your highest purpose. People who encourage truthfulness, and compassion, humility, devotion. These are the people who help us remember who we really are. And when we intentionally seek that kind of association, our relationships become energizing instead of exhausting. They don't pull us away from God, they help us move closer to Him. So this is what Krishna's saying here is not mixing with the general mass of people. This is what this really means. Should I move on to the next quality? Like I said, I can't see everybody, so always, yes, Kripa Maya.
Oh, no, I was, you said, shall I move on? I was saying, yes, move on.
Oh, okay. Well, I will with your blessing. Thank you, Prabhu. So the next quality is accepting the importance of self-realization. So as we begin to understand that this spiritual knowledge is the only thing that accompanies us beyond this lifetime, then naturally our priorities start to shift. And this doesn't mean that we stop learning practical skills. We still have, career goals, and we're still raising families and serving society. These things have their place. But Krishna asks us to recognize that there's one kind of knowledge that deserves our greatest attention because it alone can free us from material existence. And this knowledge begins with the simple but profound question of who am I? Who am I? And it's interesting when you think about the kinds of questions that we're taught from a very young age. Like, will this help me get a good job? Will this help me build a successful career? Will this look good on my resume? We obsess over those things. And they're not bad questions, they're practical. But rarely are we encouraged to ask, will this help me understand who I really am? Will this help me become a wiser, kinder, more spiritually grounded person? Imagine asking that, in what you're doing. Will this help me become more tolerant, even-minded, more compassionate? Instead of, will this help me get to where I want to go? So in other words, we're taught how to make a living, which is great. You need to know how to make a living. But Krishna here is teaching us how to live. And this is maybe why one of the characteristics of modern culture is that we're constantly encouraged to improve our lifestyle. Constantly. We're obsessed about it. We're surrounded by advertisements, by social media, endless messages telling us that we'll be happier if we buy something or accomplish something or create an impressive life. And slowly, almost even without realizing it, we start to equate lifestyle with living. But we should understand that they're not the same thing. And many of us have been there. We can have a beautiful lifestyle and we can still feel empty inside. We can have the great job, the great car, the money, and still feel empty inside. And in that, we can ask ourselves, this is where a lot of us even come to spiritual life. This is where I came to spiritual life. We start to ask ourselves, is this all there is? What is the point of this? Because lifestyle focuses on the external. Living begins with the internal. How are we living? How are we showing up? Do we really understand who we are? Because the Gita tells us that real fulfillment comes from these questions. Comes from understanding that we're not simply a body. We're not simply a mind. We're an eternal soul in relationship with Krishna. And it's when we start to understand this that our priorities naturally start to shift. we don't neglect our responsibilities. We still work, we still care for our families, we still develop practical skills, but we stop treating those things as the ultimate purpose of life. And instead, they become expressions of our service. Because once we understand that self-realization is eternal, we naturally will give it the place it deserves. And that's not as just a priority among many, but as the foundation upon which everything rests. This is what Krishna's trying to get us here. And that brings us to our last quality that we'll talk about here. And that is this philosophical search for the absolute truth. And this is something I love about the Gita and about Krishna in this path is it's not encouraging blind faith. And that's good because I cannot do anything I'm told to do. So I would be in trouble. He's encouraging sincere inquiry. Sincere inquiry. And this search reaches its fulfillment in understanding God, and establishing ourselves in eternal devotional service. So the goal is not to become just philosophical, it's to discover reality, to understand our relationship with God, to understand who we are, to understand why we're here. And truth isn't just meant to satisfy our curiosity, but it's meant to transform the way that we live. This is where we're going with all of this. And I want to just circle back here at the end. I want to circle back to this point of humility, because this is actually something Prabhupada does in the purport of this verse, which I really appreciate. He describes humility, and then he describes all the qualities, and then he brings it back to humility, which I think is something for, a good lesson for us. It starts with humility, it ends with humility. And he says something in there. He says, although the living entity is constantly being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God. And I always smile when I read that, because you think about it for a moment, like, if I were actually in control, would I choose to get sick? Would I choose to grow old? Would I choose to die? Like, of course not. The very fact that I can't control these things reminds me that I'm not the supreme controller. And most of us would say, like, oh, I get that. I know I'm not God. Of course I'm not God. But the mentality shows up all the time, and it can show up in very subtle ways. We want life to go according to our plans. We want recognition. We want appreciation. We want to be in control. In other words, we want the position that belongs to Krishna alone. And this is really what the false ego is. It's not just thinking we're important, but it's forgetting that we're in relationship with God. And this doesn't happen because we're bad people. Sometimes it happens because life is going well. We become successful. People respect us. We become good at what we do. And little by little, our abilities can become the source of our identity. And if we're not careful, instead of these things increasing our gratitude, they increase our pride. Instead of reminding us how dependent we are on Krishna, they quietly convince us that we're doing just fine on our own. And then we start feeling super self-sufficient. And when we feel super self-sufficient, it's harder to depend on Krishna. So this is why humility is so essential. Humility isn't thinking less of ourselves, but it's just thinking of ourselves truthfully. Recognizing that everything we have, our intelligence, our abilities, our opportunities, even the air that we breathe, is ultimately a gift. And when we can always remember this, gratitude naturally replaces pride. Dependency naturally replaces self-sufficiency. So this is again why Krishna begins this entire list with humility. It isn't just simply one virtue among many, but it's again, it's the foundation that protects every other aspect of our spiritual life. And it begins when we recognize I'm not the center. I'm not the controller. I'm not the supreme. I am an eternal servant of Krishna. This quality is like a shield to to falling off the edge. It's a shield for our spiritual life. We have to have this humility. It's foundational for if we really want to grow spiritually. And this is how Prabhupada concludes his purport, which again is just something for us all to know. Constantly come back to this humility again and again. You can never listen to enough classes on humility and hang out with people that are super humble, like Kripa Maya. And then maybe we can imbibe it just a little bit. We subside off their blessings. And so Krishna's final statement here, he says, all these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever they may be is ignorance, he says. And he's not saying here that every material skill is useless. He's saying that no amount of material knowledge can solve our deepest problem. It may help us live more comfortably within this world, but it can't free us from birth, death, old age, and disease. Only spiritual knowledge can do this. And that's why Krishna calls this knowledge, because this is the knowledge that ultimately changes our destination. Can you think of any knowledge in the material world that can do that, that could change our destination? No. I mean, it can change our destination in the short term, but in the grandest scheme of things, most of it doesn't really have that much of an impact. But yet we spend all of our time and energy and consciousness investing in it. Isn't that funny? What do you guys think? I think Shakti had her hand up. Shakti, I'm going to go to gallery view so I can see you.
I did because I feel for me, well, there were two things. One was I was on a group call and someone said, um, why me? Why is this happening to me? How come this is happening to me? And and I had said, well, if you're saying that, you're thinking, well, then this is going to happen to somebody else. You're wishing it almost on somebody else. Why not you? You know what I mean? Like something's going to happen. If you're saying why me, well, that's one thing. But then it's going to happen. So then why not happening to you? Well, it's almost like take the hit. Take the hit, take the lesson, right? And then, but one of the biggest things for me, like I agree with you. Like the end of it says beginning from practicing humility. So to me, that's the mic drop for me because I feel like if I can practice humility, I could somehow get out of my false ego. If I like the humility can bring me to a lot of these qualities that he speaks about. Humility, I feel like, is like the game changer. Being humble and not and like you said, not wondering about like everyone's not gonna like me. And like I don't like everyone. Like it's I don't have an aversion to people, but endeavoring to make everyone like me or try that is just it's a false narrative. It's a false energy, like, so when I can be humble and appear as myself, I actually feel like there's more people that are attracted to me as there are more people that are like, hey, wow, I love what you said, or there's more people that are attracted to me. But when I'm in that false ego, less people are
Trying.
attracted to me. And it's so it's such a lesson that I feel like I'm still, sometimes I get angry at myself. Like, why am I still learning this lesson? You know,
Mm.
and I just pray, I pray, Krishna, I'm surrendering to you. Please help me. Please help me. Because this is it keeps me from being like, from getting to where I want to go in my
Mm.
spiritual life.
Yes. Wow. Very nice. Thank you, Shakti. Thank you. Kripa Maya, do you want to take us home here?
No, no, I was just, I'm trying to figure out how to do these hearts and things. All new to me. But what Shadi just said was so beautiful. Because like, living in New Vrindavan, obviously we have, our, I don't know how to say this, our, we were given the opportunity to try to create a community that would be an example. And what you said, Shakti, is that really what people are looking for is, people that you can trust and exhibit these qualities which are already natural to all of us. We all by nature have these qualities. It just by contact with material energy, they've been covered over. So I really appreciate that. I think more than building huge palaces and temples, which are nice, they're wonderful because they attract people's attention. But ultimately, to feel that spiritual fulfillment, you want to come in contact with people who are deeply authentic and are actually living the life, of spiritual love and commitment. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Kripa Maya. Any final reflections before we end here? It's so nice spending this Monday morning with you all. Okay, my friends. Well, stay tuned because we are working on getting our merch together. And we're going to have some Conscious Collective hoodies for sale very soon. I say very soon, hopefully. Let's pray very soon. Krishna's timing. Let's see what happens. Yeah, to help raise money for our website and our further initiatives. So stay tuned for that. And sign up for the yoga festival at the end of August if you haven't yet. I think registration is only going to be open a couple more weeks. So please sign up for that and experience the magic of New Vrindavan. And I'll see you all on Thursday. See you all on Thursday. What did Erin say?
Hare
Working on it.
Krishna.
Erin's our
Thank you.
merch girl. I wasn't going to put you on the spot, Erin, but since you said it, Erin's our merch girl. We could all put a little pressure on Erin.
Thank you, everybody. This was
Thank
just
you.
such a treat to listen to everyone's wisdom. Very grateful and very humble. So have a great day, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you,
I will
Devi
say that
Radhika.
I'm not putting any pressure on Erin because isn't she pregnant?
She is pregnant.
I will not put any pressure on you, Erin, but I will say that I will pray to Nishrimadev for you and for Katie is pregnant too, correct?
She is. We didn't see
Mhm.
Katie
When
today.
I saw
Katie's,
that,
yeah.
I'm so happy for her.
Aw,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for this
Krishna, thank you,
start to my
Shakti.
day, Radha.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you, Shakti. Thank you, Chantal. We didn't hear from you today, but it's so nice to see you.
Hi. Yeah.
It's recording, actually.